I'm struck at this time of year by all the activity going on around us, and particularly by the way it's happening on so many different levels. It feels as if there's a collective surge of energy to tie up all the loose ends and finish something or arrive somewhere. I'm interested in how we participate in this and how it manifests itself in my own process. I wonder about this as a maker of things, how these threads of experiences and ideas weave themselves together and become an impulse that works its way through to my hands and my making. Facing questions like these, I find it helpful to go down the rabbit hole into process and work on things in a detailed, even repetitive way, like developing a particular skill or exploring a material in a new way.
When Grigor Samsa woke up one morning from unsettling dreams, he found himself in his bed, changed into a monstrous vermin. These words are the opening sentence of the Metamorphosis, written by Kafka, and they imply that the infamous transformation of Grigor Samsa has occurred the night before. So I question, why is this book entitled Metamorphosis, while the metamorphic act has taken place before the story begins?
When the four of us met again, we spoke to some length about theories we were familiar with, passing our interpretations around the table like friends drinking from the same cup. We spoke of Schrodinger's cat and how the value in that hypothesis is premised on the willingness to not know. We spoke of metamorphosis as a transformation we must engage in, but we also spoke of Kafka's ape, Red Peter, kidnapped from his own environment as part of a project of so-called civilization, and who in his letter to the Academy laments the transformation he could not return from. He pleads his case, seeking not a way through, but a way out. As spectators, we know the latter is unavailable. Justice is deferred. The Academy might say there is no justice without sin. But perhaps, just perhaps, Kafka, as Red Peter, might say there is no justice without retribution.
So fleeting are those moments used to define our entire lives. We are birthed, are injured, stumble into first steps, endure first dates, destroy our chastity, fail, win, graduate, party, get jobs, acquire materiality, create offspring, watch them mature to repeat your cycle, die, the end. What of the spaces in between which generates these moments? Aren't they also significant? Perhaps even more so. What of becoming? Natural law dictates that things must evolve, transform, grow. We weave into each other and create unbreakable bonds of kinship and mutate from plural into singular. Complexity breaks through as we coalesce and bear succulent fruit. But even this fruit of our shared creativity is brief and must slowly rot into accretion so space is made once again for future generations.
I came to this program because I was looking to free my own voice. I was looking for legitimacy, for the right to create. But I knew that in order to create, I had to break something down, to fulfill an organic task or a ritual, like the insects that eat the flesh of the last fallen fruit, and consequently transmuting beauty into vital energy.
Walking in the ravine recently, I ventured up the steep slope under the bridge where my dog loves to go. People hang out there. I hear them sometimes as I'm walking below. After the trees and the stream, just a stone's throw away, there's nothing but garbage and desolation. It feels like an act of violence to leave all this stuff behind against the backdrop of nature. I try to reconcile seeing these two aspects of the same place and wonder what the message is. I could focus on the damage and ugliness of human intervention and our lack of relation with the land and nature. But it comes down to the context of where am I viewing this from. If I can search for a relation with these surroundings without being attached to either narrative, then perhaps they can intersect in me and inform me about a broader perspective.
Many years ago, I went to a museum in which grew a sorry tree. Strung from every branch are notes of apologies, expressions of remorse, regret, and wishes to be better. I think about that tree often. Its branches weary with the weight of so much anonymous guilt. How the winds and rains may tear down old apologies, making way for new, permanently reshaping the branches. I hope that in the future, if we must depend on debris, it is at least an act of waste we can honor.
We fall into matter as indistinguishable beings. With explosive energy, previous selves are exfoliated to become masses of art, flesh, ash, paint, yarn, soil, vapor, refuse, memory, carbon, matter. Our fall from heaven is by no means the conclusion of our shared journey. It is the climax of forging our shared consciousness of raw creative spirit at the end of ripening. An esoteric reading of the fall season places Halloween and All Souls Day at the center of this period of great transitioning. Up the ladder of incarnation we climb in slow maturation until the autumn equinox. Then we slowly descend through darkness and decay. It takes 40 days for us to complete this terrifying transformation into beast, culminating on Halloween night. The composite we mold is finally awakened in one last hurrah, then retirement sets in and quiet slumber permeates the bitter cold.
The sky burial is a Tibetan funeral practice where the deceased is literally cut into pieces and fed to the vultures and the scavengers. It usually takes place at dawn on a mountaintop while friends and family members are gathered. The body is gradually disassembled and thrown to the vultures. Everything gets eaten. Even the remaining bones are smashed into pieces, mixed with barley, and again offered to the scavengers. Throughout this process, the persons who are in charge of the ceremony, also called the bone breakers, are joking and laughing. This tradition is about the impermanence of things and the destruction of the ego. Once the ceremony is over, the mourners leave, the vultures leave, only remains the mountain and the silence.
There are times when it seems that all we can do is breathe and pause and take stock of where we are, like guarding a space that needs to be watched over and protected. It's tempting to try to force my way through by focusing on results and the end product. But that takes me out of relation with this natural slowing down. Of all the different stages, this period of quiet and introspection is where new questions and impulses come from.
I think before this process, we may all have been in a state of always wanting. The year gets colored by scrapping, saving, finding even the most to perhaps be too little, both in what we produce and what we gain. Nothing's good enough. But I think now, as we sample nothing, we see nothing stare back at us. We see what it can offer because it has no cost. And it seems for a moment that can last a season, nothing is good enough.
The metamorphic cold of death allows us to lie in quiet nothing. But metamorphosis never ceases. It only slows to near halt so we may gather our energies and prepare for the successive rise of matter. It is often said in one example that Kemetic society revered death. However, further study reveals they were in fact obsessed with the impermanence of life. Reincarnation was an approach to preserving life beyond physical death, which was considered momentary for the Kemet. Fear not the inevitability of death, for you are an immortal soul that will continue to nourish the universe with fresh seeds. Embracing the deep nothingness gives life purpose and allows us to manipulate our egos into forces of creativity instead of depravity. Shedding our preconceptions during the fall, us four have become one mind inhabiting various bodies. We now flow into each other as tributaries join a mighty river headed out to sea. Someday soon, we will rise again, stronger and stranger.
In any given metamorphic process, the struggle is not about growing new limbs or acquiring the ability to fly. The hardest part is letting go of the old self, of the constructed ego that has been shaped by years of conforming to normative structures and social expectations. These structures are ambivalent. They carry us and they strangle us. This is why the deconstruction of our egos is such a difficult process. Something has been lost and nothing has replaced it yet. It is a moment of deep discomfort. We find ourselves drifting without anchor or direction, searching for a meaning in a sea of dust.
After going through this process as a group of strangers from literally all over the world, we agreed that we wanted to work on something together, despite how daunting collaboration can be. Over the past few weeks, we listened to each other speak about how we each approach our work. Gradually, we've become more relaxed with each other and willing to experiment on something that's new for all of us. In that process of becoming together, threads and themes have woven themselves into a collective piece of research which has worked on us as much as we've worked on it. In this incubator, we have gradually become more like one another. There were times when we'd arrive at the same thought at the same time. It's hard to comprehend this organic process, where what evolves is something we couldn't have imagined to begin with. The frustration that comes with uncertainty is part of the territory, and this too has to be gone through together. But the playfulness that we all felt was the real fruit of this intense time together, and it's earned from participation and putting ourselves under the gaze of the others. From that we can learn to trust and find courage. Everybody is changed in that process.
It is October 14th. I left land at 12 a.m. and now I reach it again at 5 a.m. Yet I have been up in the air for longer than the hours will admit. I have now seemingly traveled through time to reach new space. As I stare out the window, I also reflect. I see the projection of the land idealized, not in any consensual image. And I also see how it is. Dots of light lining the terrain, each emanating a story of a space in between. I wonder as I now reach both an end and a beginning, has this qualified as a journey against the current, ceaseless return to a past? Where are we headed? No, that's not the right question. Where are we headed? Where must we go in search of our better selves?
It is interesting how creation occurs. Numerous particles of matter are pulled together through gravity, and a being is manifested to inhabit a single space and consciousness. Everything is hurled into the soup of consciousness that cycles between exhilaration, curiosities, frustrations, accidents, all leading to harmonious laughter and playful sharing. As a ripening fruit, I was unaware of my rigid body's fear of falling from heaven to the earth. I forgot briefly that nothing in the universe exists or creates in isolation, and everything relies on other things for the survival of the collective. Once more, there is no end in sight for our journey of continuous transfiguration and play. Blending together our free-flowing particles, we have become a carbon life form filled with potential energy. What have I become? In this form, I no longer exist. We exist.
Imagine that after a painful metamorphic process, during which we passed away, we would come back as conventional beings that compromise with the standards and norms. What a wasteful process it would have been. No. If we come back, we will come back as imperfections, as glitches. We will be odd, strange, unconventional. We will not fit in their categories, and we will annoy them. We will impact the lives of everyone who crosses our path. We will be an outrageous seashell with 25 limbs and one nostril that allows us to turn water into wine. And we will invent the future.